A quick word in addition to what was introduced about Canvas. We are early stage venture. We are very thematic driven. One of our specialty is in SaaS enabled marketplaces. So across from wedding, transportation, transfix, in physician proximity with lawyer, et cetera, et cetera. So we are fairly focused on that. I mean, I think we got involved with Zola a couple of years ago, coming up 3 years now. It's been quite a privilege. So really excited for her to talk about Zola. So before we go there, just out of curiosity, show of hands, how many people have gone to a wedding with Zola, the couple use Zola registry? Okay, we got, we're making an impact a little bit at a time here. And so maybe, before we dive into the product market fit, Shan, can we just give an audience sense how big is Zola today? What are we doing, and so that we set the context for the conversation.
Sure. Hi everyone. For those of you who don't know, Zola is the fastest growing wedding registry and fastest growing wedding company in the country. So we use design and technology to reimagine wedding planning for the 2 million couples getting married every year. We do this in a number of ways. Really thinking about couples getting married today are the millennial generation, and what they want is very different from a wedding and from a registry to what their parents wanted or what previous generations wanted. And the reality is, before Zola, there was really no Web 2.0 or 3.0 tools serving this generation. So we set out to be the place that you go from the day you get engaged through that first year of marriage, so we can help you with everything that you need to do to plan your wedding and your life beyond that, all in the one place, all on Zola.
Great. How big is the business?
So we launched Zola about 4 years ago, and since then we've had hundreds of thousands of couples create and use their wedding registry on Zola, and we started as a wedding registry. And I am excited to share, we haven't shared this in many places, but just this past few weeks ago, we crossed a milestone where we've now had $1 billion worth of product gifts added to Zola registries. And so,
congratulations. Awesome. Really impressive in such a short period of time. And in fact, I think Fast Company recently named you guys a top innovator, right? Being the most innovative company transforming what people don't appreciate, $100 billion wedding industry here. So,
well, yeah, and I think what many people don't realize is actually how big the wedding industry is. So just to put it in context, for those of you who aren't as familiar, the $100 billion wedding industry in the US is the same size as the beauty industry in the US. It's bigger than the global toy industry, bigger than the global gaming industry. So it's a huge market, and it's one that hasn't really had a lot of tech startups today.
So let's go back to day zero. How did this idea come about? Right, the registry's been around a long time. Why would you tackle it?
So, like many successful startups, Zola was born out of personal need. So I was, like many of you, kind of sitting, going to different startup events, eager, hungry, ready to get started. And that year, 2013, was also the year that all my friends got married at exactly the same time. I think we all have that year. Hands up if you've had that year. It's a very expensive year. You're going to a lot of weddings, you're buying a lot of presents. And so I was going to my friends' weddings, buying from these wedding registries, which at that time was dominated by big department stores, traditional stores that were not strong at their online or mobile products, and was finding that buying for my friends in what should be one of the happiest moments of their lives for them and for me was one of the most painful shopping experiences around. So I was so annoyed with one of my friends, I called her up and I said, "What is wrong with your registry? Why did you even do this? I can't afford anything except for one spoon that's $100. And she said, "Oh, registry was so painful, I couldn't handle it, so I just let my mother do it, and I don't even know what's on my registry right now." And that was a bit of an aha moment, and so started talking to more and more people about their experience. and realized that universally, registries was painful for everyone. It was painful for the guests, it was painful for the couples getting married, and it shouldn't have to be that way because it's one of the happiest moments where people are giving you gifts. So started to interview hundreds of different couples really in that product process, and I'm a product person by training, so I started to really interview people to understand what would you want if you could register for anything, how would you want to manage your registry? And the same things kept coming up again and again, which were, one, people today want to register not just for what's on the department store shelf. They want products and experiences like Blue Apron or wine subscriptions or camping, and they want cash, they want honeymoon funds, they want a puppy fund, and so today Zola is still the only place that you can get all those things. Second, people wanted to personalize their registry. You couldn't do that anywhere else. It felt, on these department stores, it felt cold, transactional, and Zola is still the only place you can fully personalize your registry and your wedding experience, like your wedding website. And the third big surprise that kept coming up in the early days was couples would say, the worst part about registry is when the gifts start arriving and you have no idea what's coming or who sent it or what's in the box. It starts to overtake your life, sitting on the doorstep, getting stolen. Often you're away on honeymoon, you have no control. And it shouldn't have to be like that because using design and technology, you should be able to say what you receive when. So we created a way where couples have full control over when their gifts arrive, and in reality, most people don't want it until after the wedding. So that was the background, and that was how we got started, and today we are really the only product and registry that continues to do all those things that couples want. No one else does that, and that's a big reason for why we've grown so quickly.
So when you think about, for most people in the room, they all have the pain that they observe, right? They all sort of say, what if the world could be much better the way you approach registry? So that's day 0. Day 1, how do you leave the comfort of your job? How do you jump in? What process do you go through about what talent do you persuade to join you? Or how do you go about taking that, get conviction to actually jump and sort of say, you know what, this has enough legs, I want to actually try this out?
So when I was first thinking about this wedding registry idea for a startup, I started talking to my co-founder, Nobu, who I had worked with him very closely at Guilt Group for many years. And I started talking to him about this idea, and we also were at the same time talking about other ideas. And we kind of narrowed down to the ideas we kept coming back to again and again, that we couldn't forget. And we thought, let's do discovery on these top 2 ideas. Registry was second. And that's where we reached out to everyone we knew who was in the target market. So we purposely emailed, and I emailed many people, friends of friends. I harassed them and I said, can I buy you lunch? Can I buy you coffee? I just want to talk about what you went through when you were planning your wedding. And that was the way that we really understood the pain points that were out there that no one else was solving. And it was only through hearing how there was no good solution out there that we thought we are the best possible people to solve this because of our background in product and design. And this challenge was really a product and design challenge, so we felt like not only was the opportunity there, but we were the right people to solve it. And so over time, what we did was, over a matter of months, we would take what we thought were the core features, and I just spoke about the top 3, and we would design a paper prototype to try to address these features. So we would sketch, endless sketches. It was like a scene from Homeland and Carrie, and we would have many pieces of paper. We were working out of my living room in New York, which in New York is very small. So it was a living room, it was a coffee table. We were both sitting down with cramps the entire day, sketching, and then we put it up on my wall, and then my friends would come over and say, what is going on with this situation? And over time, we would have an entire user flow, which we would then start to put in front of the friends that we had initially interviewed. We would have multiple versions that we would get feedback on. We probably went through 3 rounds with these people over which they would say, I like this, I don't like this doesn't make sense, but what about this? And we started to get to a point where we thought it's ready to now become a online prototype. And so we used InVision to create a clickable online prototype, and then sought a different group of people who we didn't know as well, who were in the target market in getting married the following year, and we started to get them to react and give us feedback on that online prototype. And the more we did that, the more we narrowed down on what is the product we think people will actually want to use, as opposed to what do we think is the right product.
When you think back on that journey, right, that first, sounds like it's now the first 60 days there, what was hard? Like what was the uncertainty that you and Nobu were tackling, and how did you guys overcome those difficult moments?
I think the hardest part was really, how do we find the people that are the right people to be testing this against, versus just random people with an opinion. And so, of course, we know a lot more people who are not in the target market for weddings or getting married than we know who are in the market. So it was a lot, honestly, of just hustling and cold calling, cold emailing people to try to find people who were in the exact target market, who are not just getting married, but getting married more than 8 months away, but they're also engaged. And when you come to this is the market that you're going after, it's harder to find those people. But we knew that those were the people that would ultimately decide whether our product was a success or not. And everyone else's opinion was not as relevant because they weren't in the decision-making mindset at that point.
So you went after the decision maker in that journey there. So grabbed it, recruited engineers, built a product, release it. There's a moment of that excitement and right, sort of not knowing what the market cared or not. Just talk about that journey, like after the product was first released into the wild. Well, maybe you did a private beta first.
So actually, I knew that the product would work even before we started building it, and the way
that's conviction, guys.
But it was really because from my prior years in product development, and following this same product development process again and again, which was find the right people who are going to have to make that decision. And then we started to put the InVision prototype in front of people. And it wasn't a live site. We didn't have an engineer at that point. But we did have something that felt pretty close to a real product. And we would put it in front of people. And I distinctly remember the moment I knew this was going to work, which was a bride-to-be who was a year out from her wedding date, and she was clicking through the prototype. And what's really important here is that we were not trying to pitch it or sell it or lead her through it. We were just saying, here, just click and tell us what you think and what parts you like and don't like. So she was talking out loud, she was walking us through what she was thinking, and at some point in that hour that we spent together, she started crying, like tearing up. And I was like, uh-oh, what's wrong? What about this prototype is making you cry? And she said, I still remember to this day, she said, am I even allowed to register for all of these things? How is my registry able to even look like this? I didn't even know this was possible. She's like, I'm just so happy right now. And I knew that that was the reaction we were going for. So that was the moment I knew if we can move people into happy tears in something that they don't normally get teary-eyed about, that is an important moment. The other moment that we were really looking for was the moment where people would ask to use it for their own wedding. So once we had a prototype, I would not say, will you use this? We would wait at the end and we would say, thank you for the feedback, great to meet you, bye. And what we were waiting for them to say was, can I use this for my own wedding? Or when will this be ready? Is this going to be ready in time for me to use? And in the early rounds, they did not say that. And so we kept going until we had a product where they did start to say that. And once they did start to say it, I knew it was the product that we should launch. So that's the hardest part to get to, because we're always so anxious to get stuff out the door, but I think that process has always served us well. we use the same process actually for our latest product, which is called Zola Weddings, which is a free wedding website, a guest list manager, and a checklist. And it was the same thing of interviewing people, getting prototypes, getting them to walk through it, waiting for them to ask to use it for their own weddings. And it took a few revs to get them to the point where they wanted to use it, but we only started building from an engineering perspective once we knew that they would use it. And so that, I think, was the most important part.
Got it. Really helpful. I always sort of remember Steve Jobs used to say, a lot of people think it's sort of overnight genius as you deliver these products. There's actually endless nights of sort of sanding away those rough edges, right? He talked about that a lot. Sounds like the iterative process that you guys go through has some elements of it as well before not being too anxious of letting this out into the wild.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that you can't be innovative. One of the things that I'm most proud of is our team was able to innovate on this feature of virtual exchanges where we don't ship anything to anyone until they say they actually want it. That's a very innovative thing. No one else does that. It's really hard to build. It's really hard to manage from an infrastructure back-end operations perspective. But that was one of our key innovations, and so we're constantly trying to push the team to say, can we continue to innovate like that in all our other products? Because no one ever asked us for that. No user ever said, I'd like to do that. It was something that we have heard through their pain and then tried to solve using design and tech. So that's the challenge for our team and for every team, is to continue to push innovation, but still test it. Don't just say, this is innovative, put it out, hope someone uses it.
In addition to the emotional connection, can you talk about any quantitative metrics that matter to you, that you think about when you're trying to figure out whether this product market fit?
Well, the other thing that was important to us was based on our experience, my experience working at Guild Group for many years before starting Zola. So at Guild, I joined as the first product person when it was doing $7 million in revenue, and it had just launched. It was on fire. And then I was there 4 years. 4 years later, it was doing $600 million in revenue. So it was an incredible product and business. But my big learning from that was that the business model was really problematic. And so I would not launch a business like that again, because the business model was not sustainable. It was very hard for that to ever be profitable from my perspective. So in thinking about Zola, we thought, okay, the product from a user experience perspective is compelling. We think people will definitely use it. But how do we make sure that the business model is workable? So even if we have great growth, it's going to work as a business. And thinking about what we learned at Guild, I think there's a lot of pitfalls around e-commerce. The number one pitfall being inventory. And so we took a lot of the lessons of how do we address e-commerce problems and solve them for Zola. So the way we solved that was, at Zola we have a no inventory business model. We have, through our virtual exchange feature, virtually no returns. And for anyone interested in doing an e-commerce business, I would encourage you to not take inventory and to try to find a way to minimize returns, because returns is a silent killer of e-commerce businesses. And then we had an assortment that was evergreen, that was non-seasonal, and that required very few people in terms of operation staff. And those are factors that often take down e-commerce businesses. So ultimately, what is exciting to me for our business is not just that we have product market fit that we've seen in our product in user growth, but that as we scale, we have a business model that is actually sustainable. And it was because of the work that we did to set up the business in a way that avoids these e-commerce pitfalls.
Got it. I mean, I think to us, the real part of the real gem of Zola is where you guys thought about product market fit was actually a very broad definition of making sure the business model could actually work. It's a contrarian perspective on a lot of e-commerce business out there. They just spend a lot of money doing user acquisition. The fact that you're a very large business with very little capital, very similar to the Stitch Fix what Katrina had done over there. So impressive. I think we have a few minutes left. Maybe, it's a similar question. If you could go back to 6 years ago and give the Shan the same advice, or give the PMs and the aspiring entrepreneurs in the room advice, the common pitfalls or what you wish you knew, what would that be?
The number one thing I would say to myself 6 years ago is, and still true today, you are always interviewing. And the thing that has served me the best with Zola is that I was able to pull from people that I had worked with previously at Guild, the best engineers, the best designers, the best merchandising people and operations people, all want to work with me again because they enjoyed and appreciated the work I did with them at Guild. And so we've been able to recruit much faster because of the track record that I built with them. We were able to raise money at the seed stage much more easily because people I worked with at Guild wanted to fund me. And so when I think about what I tell my team and also myself is, it's not a one-time game. It's that relationships will come back and be important to you again and again, every day, every year, and to remember that you always have to do your best work because you're essentially always interviewing for your next job with that same person.
That's awesome. I think we might have time for one question. If anyone has a question, go ahead, please.
Yeah, the question was what size was our team when we were prototyping. So it was really two of us, myself and my co-founder, and I think it worked because my background is in product and his background is in user experience design, so we didn't need anyone else to put together what is the vision for this product, what are the key differentiators, how to talk to users, how to find users, and then how to design it in a way that is compelling to the user. It was only once we knew that this was the one we would go after, this was the product that we would go after, this was the business that would work, that we then got seed funding and brought on our first CTO.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for being with us today. Round of applause for Shan, please.